5 wagons grope blindly for the path on a starless night, their master glancing ever upward to the skies for assurance that he is on the right course. A dim lantern his only protection against the encroaching darkness. But the skies bring no comfort, shining no light, betraying no hint of what they know. The caravan carries travelers bound for the frontier hamlet of Gilded Vale, you among them, where a local lord has offered land and wealth to settlers from abroad looking for a fresh start. You have taken suddenly ill, sweating and shivering, and one of the other travelers signals for the caravan master to stop on your behalf. He pulls up just in time to avoid plowing into the trunk of a fallen tree that bars the way ahead. You will go no further tonight.
And so, your journey into the fractious world of Eora begins. Pillars of Eternity, a fantasy role-playing video game released by Obsidian Entertainment in 2015, has always appealed to me because of its world-building. The game is a spiritual successor to classics like Baldur's Gate and Planescape, and the world-building is no less intensive than such hallmarks of the genre. Pillars, the first game in what will eventually be a trilogy, follows the protagonist known as the Watcher as they enter the Eoran province of the Dyrwood. The Watcher is able to see and communicate with the souls of the dead, and they soon become embroiled in a conflict known as the Hollowborn Crisis, in which children born in the Dyrwood lack souls and are left as empty husks. The Watcher chases a man named Theos Ix Arcanon throughout the province and slowly uncovers the secrets of both a previous life and the Hollowborn Crisis. However, the types of player characters have always appealed to me in such RPGs. More specifically, I'm interested in how voice-acted protagonists, as well as players' agency in the game, affect how people relate to the story and to the player character. To explore these topics, we are going to break down this video into a couple of segments. We will discuss games in a broad sense before narrowing our focus back down to Pillars of Eternity. Video game immersion. Before we can start to explore this question and how it relates to Pillars, we have to first define what game immersion is. While RPGs, especially groups such as Bethesda's Skyrim modding community, are seemingly becoming more and more engrossed with this idea of player immersion in a game world, but the term doesn't seem to become any better defined. If you ask 100 gamers what immersion is, you will receive 100 different answers. And I should know, I asked 100 of them. Specifically, I asked, how do you experience immersion in a game world? Let's take a look at some of the answers. One respondent said, interacting with the game world and seeing how my decisions impact the game world. By building a world and characters that I am emotionally invested in, and having stakes that have weight when playing through the game, and wanting your character to succeed in positive outcomes for the world and characters. Another had a slightly different view. They said, depends if I have a choice to affect the level of immersion. Then I can create different levels for different characters. I don't like utter immersion, but suitable for story. In best case, successful immersion is very relaxing and fulfilling experience. My personal favorite respondent simply defined game immersion as full HD, 3-meter widescreen, 5.1 surround. In 2010, The Guardian's Keith Stewart wrote an article titled, What Do We Mean When We Call a Game Immersive?, that explored this topic. In it, he states that becoming immersed in a video game is partly that you really care about the outcome, for whatever reason, so you need some sort of emotional sensitivity to be able to connect to the game and want to have that connection. Stewart's research led him to believe that the player is as important to a game's immersion factor as the game itself is, and a higher level of player connectivity could lead to a more immersive game. I suggest that RPGs have a higher level of player connectivity than many other game genres. That is, of course, one of the central conceits of the genre. However, two main factors in how I relate to a game are my ability to make choices in a game and whether or not the protagonist is voiced. Let's take a look at these broader contexts now. The ability to make choices in video games. For the purposes of this video, we are going to define player agency as the player's ability to impact the story through the game design or gameplay. In his article, Player Agency, How Game Design Affects a Narrative, Josh Beiser says that good player agency is about having the player make choices both large and small. So, while yes, not every choice should be a matter of life and death, they should still mean something to the character and the plot. Wherever you start the game at in terms of how much control the player has on the plot should be where it ends. Pillars of Eternity is a game where agency takes center stage. While small choices made during character creation have relatively little effect on the final plot of the game, the player character, known in-game as the Watcher, has the ability to completely reshape the fate of both the Dyrwood and Eora. This wide variety of choices in the Dyrwood are one of the reasons I love Pillars so much. To me, good choices in an RPG are essential to how much I enjoy playing it. One such choice in the game centers around the Animancy hearings in the city of Defiance Bay. Animancy is the study of souls in the Pillars universe, and it is extremely contested in the nation of Dyrwood. The Watcher needs to attend the hearings, but cannot do so without aligning themselves with one of three factions. There are the old and rigid Order of the Crucible Knights, the rough and rebellious group known as the Dozens, and one of the oldest families in the city, the criminal powerhouse of House Dominel. The groups are mutually exclusive, and to continue the game, the Watcher must join one of them. However, there is another, secret option that is not explicitly outlined for the player. If the Watcher antagonizes the other factions, yes, your actions and responses in chat do in fact affect gameplay, they can attend with an invitation from Dunyard Row, courtesy of Lady Idas Webb. Towards the end of the game, the Watcher must align themselves with one of the Eoran gods in order to proceed to the final quest of the game and confront Theos Ixarkanen, the ageless Grand Master of the Leaden Key, worldly agent of the goddess Boudica, and main antagonist of the game. In fact, the choices made in Pillars of Eternity actually affect the player in the sequel, Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire. Thus, the agency of the player plays an important role in the series and is a crucial element of how Obsidian increased player connectivity and the game's immersion factor. As a part of the survey I conducted, which I should mention was a convenient survey and should not be taken as a randomized and thorough one, I asked gamers how they felt about player choices in video games. 77% of respondents said that player choices in a video game made them like the game more, but of those, 89.6% only appreciated the choices as long as they affected the game in some way. Only 3% of total respondents did not want player choices, and the remaining 10% did not mind either way. Voice protagonists in RPGs. On a Steam discussion board, user Fireseed wrote a post titled Fallout 4: The Problem with Voice Protagonists, detailing their opinion on why they disagreed with Bethesda's choice to include a voice-acted protagonist in their 2015 AAA release. Drawing in the concept of game immersion, Fireseed asserts that we play RPGs to put ourselves into a foreign land, or to roleplay as some invented character in our head. Bethesda's playgrounds are a place to experiment with the rules of the world, and to do and say things we never would in real life. They go on to discuss how the voice-acted protagonist drew them away from their character and limited their ability to connect to the game world. However, there are positives to voice-acted protagonists. Steam user Fireseed starts their post by writing that they feel comfortable saying that Fallout 4 features Bethesda's best main quest, and this is partly due to having a voice actor that talks. Without a speaking protagonist, the third-person cinematics would have never worked, and a lot of the emotional weight placed onto the character would have fallen flat. Games such as the Assassin's Creed series or the Witcher series have this emotional weight behind their characters and storyline. It can be argued that part of their success in drawing in gamers is due to their voice-acted protagonists. This is seen no better than in Red Dead Redemption, where the player becomes increasingly connected to main protagonist John Marston, and the cutscenes are emotionally deep and, in some cases, utterly heartbreaking. Of the gamers I surveyed, 20% preferred a silent protagonist, such as Link from the Legend of Zelda series, a character that has no ability to speak in either words or text. 41% preferred the non-voiced protagonist like the Watcher from Pillars of Eternity, and 39% preferred a fully voiced protagonist. When asked if voiced protagonists increase or decrease a player's sense of connection to a character, 42% said it increased their sense of connection, 26% said it decreased it, and 32% of respondents said it did not affect it. I've always found that I can best project myself onto a character if they are not voiced, but, like some of the responses that I have received from those surveyed, different characters work differently. I am glad that the Watcher and the Dragonborn are not voiced, but I do not know if Red Dead Redemption would have the same appeal if John Marston had not been voiced. I feel like some RPGs work best without a voiced character, and some do not. Games like Assassin's Creed and Firewatch, where the protagonist's development is central to the story, work best with the voiced protagonist. Games like Pillars of Eternity and, dare I say, Fallout work best without a voiced protagonist, allowing players to focus on the wider world around the story. Conclusion. So, what should be the takeaway from all of this? This is, of course, an incredibly subjective topic and should be treated as such. Role-playing games are also incredibly diverse, and not all types of protagonists or game formulae work for all subcategories. In his article titled, "The Many Different Types of Video Games, Their Subgenres," author Vince details at least 7 different subgenres. I have found that the games I can get most immersed into have plenty of opportunities for player agency and a lack of a voice acted protagonist. For me at least, some of the many strengths of Pillars of Eternity lie in its ability to thrust me into the world of Eora, and I love being able to see my actions and choices take effect on the game world around me. This is central to my personal definition of game immersion. If I decide to kill all of the villagers in my Skyrim game, I can. Not that I would do that, but it's nice that the option is there. I could antagonize all 3 major factions in Pillars and still be able to continue with the questline. And, while I, again, would never do that, it's wonderful to have that option in the game. It makes the world seem more visceral and tangible, 2 things I've always valued in my games. But, when all is said and done, there cannot be a definitive answer to any of the questions posed. Like other forms of media, video games are incredibly subjective, and people prefer different characters in different games. While some people like me might prefer a certain level of agency in character design, there is no universal consensus in this medium. The closest thing I have found to anything even close to a consensus is that most players prefer some level of player agency in video games, whether or not those choices affect gameplay. Choices generally help players to feel more immersed in the game and connect them more to the character and the greater game world. When starting this process, I thought that one area that would be universally agreed upon is that creating your own character in the game makes gamers feel more immersed in it. But I was most certainly wrong. Only 69% of gamers agreed with that statement, and 26% had no opinion on the matter. It seems that, like most areas of personal preference, there are no conclusive decisions that can be made on this matter. Pillars of Eternity will likely remain one of my favorite games for many years to come, and it seems that, in this world of indecision, is the only conclusion we can come to. Thank you for watching.